This episode is brought to you by Libro FM, the first and only company that lets you purchase audiobooks directly from your favorite local bookstore. Ours is the Reading Rock Books in Dixon, Tennessee. You can pick from more than 150,000 audiobooks, including bestsellers and recommendations from booksellers. You'll get the same audiobooks at the same price as the largest audiobook company out there. You know the name. But you'll be part of a different story, one that supports the community. If you're new to audiobooks, they're the perfect way to get more books into your busy life. Listen during your commute, while doing chores, walking the dogs, or just relaxing at home. All you need is a smartphone and the free Libro FM app. If you already love audiobooks and don't know what to listen to next, check out recommendations and curated lists from the people who know audiobooks best, booksellers. The Good Old Days has a special offer for you. Get 2 audiobooks for the price of one with your first month of membership using the code OLDDAYS, all one word, OLDDAYS, Old Days. There's also a special offer until the end of 2020 for the holidays. When you buy a 12-month Libro FM gift membership, either for yourself or for someone else, half of that will go directly to the bookstore of your choice. The offer is only valid for new members in Canada and the US. Now on to our show. Christmas bells are said to bring good tidings, but what happens when they are carried by someone or something more sinister? Not all Christmas characters have rosy cheeks and a jolly laugh. Some have horns, fangs, and carry a basket to haul away naughty children. Originating from the depths of Norse mythology, this figure's main role is to check the naughty list, and he does not simply leave a lump of coal for those that make it. The lucky ones might escape being carted off only to face similar terror the following year, and there is no way to fend him off, nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. Freddy Krueger himself could not have dreamed up anything more terrifying. So you better not pout, you better not cry, you better watch out, because this is the legend of Krampus, Santa's devilish little helper.
This is The Good Old Days, a podcast at the corner of history and true crime. I'm Margaret Coomer.
And I'm Jasmine Brand.
And welcome back. Happy holidays. You are tuning in for The Good Old Days Christmas edition, and we are talking about Krampus. So a little bit of a diversion. I guess he's not necessarily a criminal. I don't know.
I mean, he does some shady stuff.
It's true. I think he's probably at the intersection of history and true crime. I would say that. He's hanging out. He's hanging on the corner.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
He's not driving the car. He's not driving the sleigh.
It's like a Venn diagram, and he fits in some of the bubbles, but not all of them.
Correct. And he's just like riding shotgun in Santa's sleigh.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I'm excited about this. Isn't this one of your favorite stories?
It is. This is my favorite Christmas story, which probably says a lot about me.
It does. Don't worry about it, though. So who and what is Krampus, Jasmine? Why don't you give us the lowdown?
Okay. So Krampus is often referred to as one of Santa's little helpers.
Fucking frightening.
Although he's not so little, he's definitely not an elf. And he's not there to do any good,
He's
really.
Basically the antithesis of Will Ferrell's character in Elf. That's what we need. So you know how they did like Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies? Mm-hmm. You need Elf and Krampus. How badass would that be?
The most common image of him that I can find is that he is a horned and hoofed half goat, half demon, or half man, or sometimes even just a man when you get to the more recent stories. Depends on, again, what you're reading. But horned and hoof, half goat, we'll say half demon, with fangs and a long pointed tongue. Sometimes he also has a tail. Oh. And he wears a cloak of small bones with a basket strapped to his back and chains adorned with jingle bells, for that festive spirit.
I read children were alerted to Santa or Saint Nick and Krampus approaching by Krampus's jingle bells. which I'm like, oh my God, that makes me think of the Ghost of Christmas Past in Christmas Carol.
Well, and chains in Christianity are supposed to reference like
damnation.
Being tied to hell or the devil. So that was why this imagery comes about.
Sure.
Which is interesting when you think of like all of the different Christmas stories that kind of pull that in.
Yeah, for sure.
Or just Jingle Bells, the song, gives it a whole new frame of reference.
Yeah, that's freaking terrifying.
Jingle all the way to hell.
Oh, God. There we go.
It's not funny, really. Anyway, his mission is kind of the opposite of Santa. So Santa, you want to behave, so you get presents. But with Krampus, you want to behave, so he literally doesn't drag you to hell with him or
To his
eat
lair.
you, which is where that cloak of small bones comes from. It's children's bones.
Oh my God.
Isn't that terrifying?
Yeah.
Like, so he's like the opposite of Santa. So instead of rewarding good behavior with presents and treats, he pulls you from your bed if you've been bad and takes you to hell or eats you or whatever. If you're lucky, you might return a year later.
What's in the whatever category?
Whatever category. Depends on the legend that we're reading. In some legends, he carried like birch twigs with him to literally like beat the kids. And keeping in mind this is like a prehistory story, so you know that's not actually, that is still in some of the modern tellings, but anyway, that's in part of the whatever category. It's not good. Like one of the stories I read said you would wake up on St. Nick's Day, which is actually December 6th. There's a whole different like frame of reference for this, either with like treats and toys and candies or nursing your wounds.
Oh, shit.
Like, what the actual...
When I was telling Nick, my husband, about this, you know what he said?
What?
He was like, that's punishing bad behavior. And I support that. I was like, oh my God.
At least you're finding out now.
This is the man I'm about to have children with. So I hope those kids have, are well behaved.
Well, and it's interesting that you bring up the coal, because in certain versions of this legend, it wasn't that you received coal if you were bad. It was that you were replaced with coal. So because you were worthless.
Because that's better. That's fuel.
Yeah.
Better for the family.
Yeah. So if you didn't help your family with chores and you didn't behave and you weren't like a good impression to society for your family, you're deemed as useless. You are taken to hell for the year and they will receive coal as payment. So talk about child trafficking, like being serious. Like, what the? Like,
That's intense.
And this is a story that gets told to kids to make them behave. Like, if you're scared all year that you're going to be replaced with literal coal, like, what would that do to you?
Well, okay, I want you to think, like, pre-1980, really, kids were not treated like kids. They were treated like little adults. And so this is pretty much in line. Like, the Brothers Grimm, those stories, and the original fairy tales, everything, it's really terrifying. They weren't trying to shield children away from very scary stuff because, hello, the world sucks. I love now, people are trying to, be a little bit more tender and, but at the same time, I think that's what we see. And this legend is really popular in like Germany, Austria. Like,
what was Prussia and the Ottoman Empire?
So pretty hardcore cultures.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and this is a holiday, I guess, if you want to call it a holiday, or a figure they still celebrate. This only became an official thing in 2013.
Wait, what only became an official thing?
So there's something called Krampus Night, basically.
Krampusnacht.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that became an official Austrian holiday in 2013.
Interesting. Well, it was still celebrated.
Many
moons before.
Right? Oh, hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah.
But like the country made it an official thing. So this is still very much like part of that region of the world's folklore and legend and everything.
There's a town in Austria that has a Krampus run the night before St. Nicholas Day. And I'll tell you about it. And it's intense. And it's like kind of problematic because guys get drunk and then put on masks, like devil masks, and like assault people in the street with birch twigs and shit. Like they actually have problems. Like I have one story that I read, a woman who was basically attacked by like a cluster of devils. Now it's like an agoraphobic. Like she has agoraphobia and doesn't leave her house like in the month of December because she's afraid she's going to get set upon by some Krampuses as she's walking down the street. Which I'm like, that's fucked up. So it affects adults too.
So extending the legend to modern day.
Indeed. Well, let's get a little background information on Krampus so we can understand where he came from, and then we'll just kind of bring it up to modern day. Does that sound
absolutely.
Good?
I mean, I think if anyone is listening from that region of the world, they probably already know a little bit about this, but let's introduce new audiences to this terrifying figure.
Yeah. So the origin of Krampus is actually in Norse mythology, so Viking mythology, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Krampus in Norse means claw. And I think that sounds so metal. You know? But have you seen the mashup video of that hardcore Baptist preacher preaching about casting out COVID-19 like it's the devil? And it's got like this guy. So it's like two pictures side by side. And he's like, you got to cast COVID-19 out. Get it out. Get it out. And then the next screen is the guy playing his electric guitar is like, and it just sounds hilarious. It's great. You need to look it up. Anyway, so Krampus apparently was the son of Hel. Is that how you pronounce it? Oh, so it's spelled Hel. So Hel, I don't know. Son of Hel. She's the goddess of the underworld. And one thing I found that I really liked, alehorn.com had a piece on Krampus, and they described Krampus as a hybrid goat hell spawn. I thought that was apt, and I love it. Fun fact, Krampus is the grandson of the Norse god Loki. So that's pretty cool.
Any Thor fans?
Oh, man. And what's his name? Tom
Hiddleston? Is it Hiddleston? Yeah, it is.
I don't know. Tom Sexyston, because he is just beautiful. I love him. And another fun fact from godsandgoddesses.com, the phrase go to hell came from Hel and Niflheim, which is her queendom of the dead. Krampus really starts to appear in like more modern history, I guess, with the celebration of Yule, which is also probably better known as the winter solstice. So it's the shortest day of the year, and it's celebrated like a new year, kind of out with the old, in with the new. Krampus's duty was basically to rid the world of bad stuff, naughty children, evil spirits. I feel like every mythical figure kind of serves a purpose. Krampus isn't just evil for evil's sake. He serves a purpose. It's like he reflects the badness in the world that he's trying to seek out, almost. So I guess it takes one to know one. Yeah? So Saint Nicholas, how do we kind of weave Saint Nicholas in with Krampus? So Saint Nicholas was a 3rd century figure, but he becomes popular about the 11th century. He became a household holiday favorite. And try as they may, the Christian church really couldn't purge the love of pagan idols like Krampus from their flock completely. And instead, Krampus became forever woven with St. Nicholas, much to the chagrin of the Christian church. St. Nicholas Day is celebrated on December 6th. Children leave their shoes outside the door for St. Nicholas, who fills them with special fruit, candy, nuts, cookies. Kind of think of this as like an olden days Harry and David gift basket. Then Krampusnacht occurs the night before. And basically Krampus comes in and clears out the bad kids from the year, leaving the good ones to reap their rewards from St. Nicholas. So this is a really popular holiday in the Alpine region, which is like Germany, Hungary, Austria, Slovenia, the Czech Republic. There's an annual Krampus run in Hollabrunn, Austria. People get dressed up in their scariest Krampus costumes and run through the streets, whipping innocent bystanders with switches. The purpose? Apparently, this is to ward off evil spirits. It is supposed to be fun, and people apparently like it, but there are always plenty of reports of masked drunken men with rods getting out of hand, because what could go wrong? But Krampus really became particularly popular in the late 19th century and the early 20th century. So pre Nazi Germany, Krampus was really popular, but once the Nazis rose to power, fascist governments in Austria, Krampus was essentially banned. And like you're like, I guess Krampus was Antifa, so anti-fascist.
I think I wrote that really late at night. I'm
That's
like,
hilarious.
This is funny.
You're like, this is funny. I love it. It's going in here. I made a funny.
But yeah, I mean, they really like didn't like him. Also, the Catholic Church really didn't like Krampus.
Oh, of course not. So it's so you have a pagan idol who is forever woven into the framework of Saint Nicholas, who is the patron saint of children. So yeah, I can see why they would have a problem with that.
Yeah. I mean, they tried to make a version of Krampus that was like their own and looks basically like a shepherd.
Remix.
Yeah, basically. They're like, let's take away all of these like scary looking attributes. Yeah. He's still going to do terrible things to kids, but he looks kind of like a Saint Nick.
Okay. Well, I think they've kind of blended the two, but now in the States, because if you think about Santa is supposed to have like mystical powers, right? And Krampus in certain versions is a magician. Mm-hmm. And so I think that we've kind of blended these two figures, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
The evolution of Santa Claus.
Knecht Ruprecht, if I'm Knecht Ruprecht. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
So that's the Catholic or Christian version of Krampus?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So he is basically like how it was explained as Santa for bad kids. So you still have these two figures, Saint Nick and Knecht. I'm just not even going to. It translates to Rupert. Santa and Rupert.
Okay.
And he does the same things. The only difference is that this is the Christian version and the Catholic Church is not so mad at that.
Sure.
So to get into a little bit of Saint Nick, because we haven't actually talked about anyone that's real yet. You know, Krampus is entirely settled in folklore.
I mean, unless you've seen half goat, half demon walking around.
Legit, though, if anyone has seen that, please let us know.
Holy mother of God. I would be so scared. Like some of the freaking pictures of these like Krampus runs, people in these costumes are freaking terrifying. They are so scary. It reminds me of that devil face from The Exorcist. Ugh. No. Anyway,
well, they made they made a whole movie about this like a couple of years ago. It was
about
a horror
Krampus?
movie. Yeah. I
Really?
think it had someone weird like Paul Rudd or something in it.
I love Paul Rudd. You know, he was at Shawnee Mission West. At the sister high school of mine.
Oh.
In Kansas. Yeah.
Look at you. Hold on. Let me see who was in it because it probably wasn't him at all. And I'm just like, I want him to be in this. Who was in it? Oh, no, it was Adam Scott from Parks and Rec.
Yes. Dude, there's a show that came out with him a couple years ago called Little Evil that I want to watch.
Have I seen that?
It's like where he marries this woman with a kid and the kid turns out to be the Antichrist.
Yes. I did watch that. It's good. You should watch it. You should watch it.
I want to see it so bad.
But yeah, he also was in Krampus a few years ago. And I haven't watched the movie. I've watched a lot of clips. Mm-hmm. And I want to watch it. It basically like is the modern day retelling.
Dude, we should have watched that before we did this.
We should have. That's okay. We can watch it after and do a supplemental episode. But anyway, unlike Krampus, Santa or Saint Nick was a real person. So Santa or Saint Nicholas was Saint Nicholas of Myra from Greece. So 3rd century. He was around during the Roman Empire doing his thing.
Doing his thing. Doing all his saintly stuff.
And he's not considered just the patron saint of children, but also of sailors, merchants, archers, repentant thieves, prostitutes, brewers, pawnbrokers, unmarried people, and students.
Sounds like my kind of dude.
Right?
Yeah.
He's kind of a cool guy.
Yeah.
So one of the most famous stories tied to Saint Nick and his generosity is how he had heard about a father who had lost his entire fortune. Doesn't say how. I don't know what happened to him, including the dowry for his 3 daughters. And this is super important, right? You can't marry your daughters off if you don't have a dowry to go with them.
Yeah. I mean, They're worthless.
Right?
They offer no value if they don't have a hefty dowry.
What are you going to do with these 3 women?
Ugh.
So
undowried girls.
And I don't know what's wrong with the dad, but apparently, like, he can't work or whatever. He's not pulling in any money.
Fucking
so
deadbeat.
It's like, oh, we're going to send these 3 girls to prostitute themselves to make money for the family. And then they'll never be able to get married because they're ruined, which I have so many thoughts.
I feel like I'm chewing on a lemon right now.
I have so many thoughts. But anyway, this is the story. We're in the year like 300, so It's not surprising, but it's still frustrating.
Right.
So this is what's happened. So the dad's lost all his money. He's not working or not pulling in enough money. So in order to pay the bills, the 3, probably girls, because again, it's the year 300, are going to be forced into prostitution.
So you're saying probably like young children.
Yes. Well, I mean, so we're in the year 300. Mary was what, 13 when she gives birth, if we're referring to like Bible stories?
I mean, I'm not really biblical by nature, so I don't really know. But that's
I don't know why I know as much about the Bible as I do.
You do know a lot about it. You're like, let me tell you about this Bible story that's not even in the Bible. I'm like, okay.
I'm gonna blame my mom for that one.
Hey, that's cool,
but,
man.
No, I mean it's useful, but I think Mary is supposed to be.
Our podcast just hit 7,500 downloads.
Yay!
Yay!
Anyway, Saint Nick happens upon this story, and it's one of the versions of the story is that he lurked around their house, which seems super creepy to me. And anyway, he didn't want to have his charity be known, so instead of outright just giving them money or trying to help them, he sneaks back one night and throws a bag of gold coins through the family's window.
And hit the dad in the head, and he died instantly.
No, apparently it lands nicely on the table. The family questions this not at all, takes the money, and marries off the daughter.
Slip of the tongue.
The evening after the wedding of the eldest daughter, Saint Nick returns and does the same thing. He throws a bag of gold coins into the house so then the second eldest daughter can get married. Mm-hmm. And once that happens, the dad's like, all right, someone's up to something. I'm just not going to take all these bags of gold coins lying down.
Afoot here.
So he decides to wait up after the second daughter's wedding to see who is giving him random gold coins or what is giving him random gold coins.
Sure.
And Saint Nick, in all of his wisdom, was not smart enough to outsmart the dad who just didn't sleep for 4 days, apparently. And so he gets caught in the act of throwing this bag of gold coins, and he makes the dad promise that he's not going to tell anyone that it was him, because it's supposed to be.
Since we're having this conversation about this story, I think that went over well.
Yeah, obviously. Honestly, I'm not a fan of this dad. So anyway,
us judging people from the year 300.
You know what? I'm going to judge them. If people in 1700 years want to judge me in the same way, have at.
All right, there you go. You heard it, folks.
It's recorded. So this happens. The dad is not supposed to tell anyone about this generosity. Obviously, we're, again, like you said, we're talking about it.
We're talking about it now, so somebody found out.
He definitely told someone. This becomes a big part of the legend, and this is the reason why Santa has to bring presents under the cover of nightfall, because it's supposed to be a secret act of generosity.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So that's now baked into the legend.
Well, that's nice.
Isn't that nice?
That is nice.
Honestly, Saint Nick is just a very wholesome character, and I have no problems with him.
Okay. Jasmine approved.
And he goes around.
I don't hear you say. I don't hear you give approval of many historical figures. I think this is a first.
It
Saint
is a
Nick,
first.
Jasmine approved.
And you better believe I looked for problematic content. There is none.
Yeah. Dude just chucking bags of gold.
And he used to do this, and then something that it became kind of a habit for him, and he would just go around and fling bags of gold or shove food down fire chimneys and all sorts of stuff. So that's where we get that too, is one of the ways that he would deliver the goods to a family is hopefully they didn't have a fire going, which
well, that's just barbecuing.
Yeah. But anyway, he would shove things down chimneys.
This is where This is where people learn how to roast a pork shoulder.
Maybe, you never know. So yeah, he would like put things down chimneys, throw things through windows, basically do anything to avoid being seen giving gifts and money and presents.
Gotcha.
And this applied to everyone. It wasn't just to children.
So it's random acts of kindness, random secret acts of kindness.
Yeah, and he like didn't want any credit for it, although obviously he gets all of the credit, and just, did this and tried to help all people. So really, honestly, again, I'm going to let my like Bible knowledge out here. He is acting in the way that like Jesus was wanting people to. So it does have a very...
He's walking the walk.
Yeah, it does have
He's not just talking the talk.
Exactly. It's got a very Christian root, whether, we see Santa as that kind of figure or not today. And I would say Santa doesn't have to apply to any kind of religion. Like you see...
Well, Santa now prays the religion of Coca-Cola.
Yes.
So.
But you see, there's similar figures like this where it's supposed to be, random acts of kindness in all sorts of religion. Buddhism has it. I'm not as familiar with Islamic religions, but I'm sure there are figures like that in this. In fact, if you know of any, I would be really interested to read up on them. So,
yeah,
tell me about it. But yeah, so it's very rooted. So of course the Catholic Church loves that, but they don't like this whole like devil figure so much.
Ugh.
So going back to the source of our story.
Krampus. Zeroing
in on him. So he's like the counterbalance to Saint Nick. And that's where we get the traditions of, Krampus night and the Krampus run happening before St. Nicholas Day. And of course, baked into Western tradition, it's all one person. Santa's going to judge you for being naughty or nice.
Sure.
And act accordingly.
Yeah.
Although he probably won't drag you to hell. Hopefully not. That would be terrifying.
No, I think no. No. No.
As Saint Nick has evolved over time, and we now have Santa, and we celebrate Santa with Christmas, which is a good few weeks after St. Nicholas Day, so has Krampus. Krampus has been known throughout history as all different names, including, again, I'm so sorry for my pronunciation, Knecht Ruprecht, the Rupert guy I was talking about, Serta Perchetin?
I don't know.
Serta, Perchetin, Black Peter, Schmutzel, Pelsnickel, and Klaboff. And in fact, I think the run is called the Klaboff Run.
So, question: How do Krampus and Saint Nick join together? Like, at what point do they converge?
So it's in an effort by the Catholic Church to like get rid of Krampus. They instead introduce him as this like Knecht Ruprecht figure.
Okay, so basically the Catholic Church realized that people were still having fun with the Krampus myth and doing Krampus Nachts and things like that. And they were like, this isn't going to fly. He's a pagan idol. So guess what, world? We've got Knecht Ruprecht here. And instead of stamping him out, people still called him Krampus. It just evolved over time.
Yeah, and honestly, like this figure shows up more like a Santa Claus figure. Like he typically has a long white beard and hair. He is wearing like long kind of gowns, usually like a brownish color gown. And again, with him, he has jingle bells and a basket to carry away the bad kids.
So he kind of sounds like a cross between the Grim Reaper and some sort of like monk.
Yeah, I mean, he looks, when you see him portrayed by, I guess, if we want to call them Santa's helpers in modern day, he looks kind of like a wise man, like from the Nativity. He looks kind of like that with a long white beard.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So priestly. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So they've taken away all of the symbolism of hell and the devil and made him a much more approachable, family-friendly figure. And when I was researching this, there's like a whole bunch of pictures of like little German kids in front of this, Knecht Ruprecht figure. And it's like a totally normal thing.
Pictures. I think we should post several pictures on Instagram.
We'll post some pictures on Instagram and on the website. We usually do the one photo, but we'll put a whole bunch up.
Nice.
Because there's, some of this stuff, you just need to see it.
Yeah.
You really just need to see it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that is the goodoldayspod.com.
Yes.
Again, the goodoldayspod.com.
Thank you, Maggie.
You're welcome.
And he's supposed to serve exactly the same thing. And the Catholic Church does this with a lot of pagan traditions. It's why we have Christmas. Because it's winter solstice. They just slightly move the date and say, oh, well, we'll slap Jesus's birthday in there, even though it's probably in like July or something.
Isn't it because of the shepherds with their flocks? So that is indicative of a warm weather because they wouldn't have been doing that in the middle of winter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just kind of slapped it all together with winter solstice and was like,
trying to cancel out pagan tradition.
Here's this like, we're going to hold it at the same time you would hold your pagan traditions, but here's the Christian version. And that's why they kind of all engulf into one. So then they can then put Saint Nick, who is really the exact opposite of Krampus, but they serve a similar sort of function as far as, quote unquote, keeping kids in line. I mean, there's a lot of problematic things that we could go down the line of like punishment and rewarding of good behavior. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah,
I'm not a parent, but I'm acknowledging it.
Sure.
But that, they serve that same sort of function. So it's just evolved over time into something that is more digestible, I would say.
Sure. Okay, cool. So I thought one of the articles that I read was talking about how in recent years, a humbuckery attitude of modern people, we're searching for anti-Santas because we're tired of all the fa la 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 la, and now people are worried that Krampus is being commercialized.
Well, I guess they have a movie, and I saw someone on TikTok the other day that had a Krampus shirt because they used to make postcards of Krampus, like shoving kids into baskets.
That like super long tongue just like totally weirds me out. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. He's very frightening looking.
He is.
Yeah.
And that's kind of his purpose, I guess.
Yeah. Like I said, I think he reflects the evil that he's looking for, which is funny because he's like a children's folk hero, but he's like reflecting the evil. Like, God, these kids are so bad. I don't know.
Scared straight.
So Jasmine sent me a really interesting article, and it was comparing the origin stories and the origin behind a lot of our modern horror flicks, like specifically Freddy Krueger. And Freddy Krueger is often compared with Krampus. Like Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, Jason from the Friday the 13th movies, all of these figures punish kids after they've done bad things, like had sex or smoked pot or whatever, and then they get slayed or chainsawed or hacked to death or whatever. And that is really the essence of the Krampus story. If you misbehave, bad things happen to you, which I think is really interesting. And that article went on to say, and
it's an article by Kara Shimabukuro.
Okay.
And it's called The Boogeyman of Your Nightmares, Freddy Krueger's Folkloric Roots.
Yeah. And this author, she made the argument that horror movies and the monsters in them have a tendency to reflect what the society as a whole is afraid of at that point in time. So like in the 1980s version, there were of like Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street with Freddy Krueger. In the middle of the 1980s, there was a whole slew of childcare scandals. And so people were really terrified that, their children are being abused and they're none the wiser. And so that would have been the underpinning of these horror movies in the 80s. And then in the post 9/11 world, she made the argument that people are really afraid to trust that like you can't trust the truth. Like nothing is as it seems. And basically like the 2010 Nightmare on Elm Street remake is super sexual too. Like it's very like, it's gross, but it's in the vein of like what our modern, like the Me Too movement, all this stuff, like, like sex scandals and things like that. Like, I feel like that's really been kind of like the biggest social upheavals in our current society have a tendency to be around like women's issues and sexual assault and things like that, at least in the last like decade or so. And so a lot of the horror movies in these last 2 decades have been centered around like very sexualized, like Predator style. Does that make sense? And I think that's really interesting because I didn't even consider that. But of course, like whatever is going on in society is going to bleed through people's art. That's just how it goes.
Well, and I read a paper recently talking about how you could look at some of these figures. So you take like the Freddy Kruegers and the Jason Voorhees and all of like the evil figures in these slasher movies, and you can take them to represent like the patriarchy and take, you know, the final girl or the, you know, the girl who survives and ends up overcoming whoever this monster is as feminism.
Oh.
And so that was like a really interesting perspective of like, you literally have feminism overcoming the patriarchy through this symbolism in horror movies, which
interesting
is nothing that I'd ever thought of before. But honestly,
it's true. It's almost always a woman who survives. I mean, have you seen Cabin in the Woods?
Yes.
My favorite. So original. I saw that in the theaters and I was like, that is amazing. But the same thing, like it's always a lone woman who ends up surviving. Or in the case of like Rob Zombie movies, not surviving. You think she gets out and then she gets hit by a semi, you know, like anyway. But yeah, you're totally right. I think that's really interesting. I have not thought about that.
Isn't that a cool like perspective? Because there was an argument made for a while that slasher movies were like sexist because of the obvious, you know,
scream queens and all that.
Yeah, and you know, it's always after the teens have sex that they all get slaughtered. But really, when you look at it, there's like more to it. You can, if you interpret it that way.
Sure.
I don't know if that was its intention, but
it's typically the one good girl is the one who survives. Like Jamie Lee Curtis, like she wasn't the one having sex and drinking and doing all that stuff.
But in the modern, like the one she just did, I mean, she had a kid, she was divorced, like so it's updated it for the times.
Yeah. Yeah. But isn't that usually the case, though? It's usually like the one good girl is the one who survives. So in that way, that kind of does like put a damper on the feminism part because it's like reinforcing like she survived because she wasn't doing all this stuff. So in the way, that kind of turns that on its head a little bit.
Maybe. Unless if you look at like the people, if you look at the killer as pure symbology, it purely symbolic, and they're against all of the things that you see those other people doing, and
she survives. Yeah.
I mean, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Interesting, but Krampus could very well be the origin story behind Freddy Krueger. Any number of these, like, you know, scary horror monsters from the 1980s could probably be compared to Krampus, who is punishing children / teenagers for doing bad things. So interesting. Yeah. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's a really good note to leave it on.
Okay. Well, folks, we hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you did, we would love for you to head to your favorite podcasting platform and leave us a review. Also, you can find all of our episodes up on our website, thegoodoldayspod.com. Jasmine, what about social stuff?
So social stuff, you can find us on Twitter at thegoododpod. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at thegoodoldays.pod. And I'm working on TikTok and Instagram. Like, I want to do some live soon. So if that's something you're interested in, let me know.
All right. Well, thank you folks so much. We hope you enjoy your week. Bye-bye.
Bye.